The Brady Bunch, The Bionic Woman, and Family Ties, Kelsey Grammer, Phyllis Diller, and more. Just a few of the names and shows in the Hollywood memoir, When You Step Upon a Star. The author is longtime Hollywood reporter William Keck. I'm Tandy Culpepper. Meet him in this episode of The Hollywood Beat. Well, thanks for talking with me. Enjoyed the book.
Thank you for reading it. I enjoyed writing it. It was
well, I could tell you did. It seemed to me like I was perched on your shoulder looking over at you as you wrote it, and I was variously titillated and, shall I say, horrified.
Yes, that's the idea. That's the idea. Yeah.
Okay, the title is When You Step Upon a Star, but it's longer than that. Give me the whole title.
Yeah, When You Step Upon a Star, Cringe-Worthy Confessions of a Tabloid Bad Boy. I should have said reformed, because I'm not a bad boy anymore, or as bad.
I think we all are a little bad from time to time. Writing for the Enquirer, though, is in a league of its own. You wrote for the National Enquirer for how long?
3 years. 3 years in the mid-90s. I was there during that O.J. Simpson era where everything changed for the Enquirer. They went from being a joke to actually being respected for breaking some serious news stories.
Well, now, if memory serves me correctly, when John Edwards was running for president, the Enquirer wound up breaking the news about, I think her name was Raelle Hunter.
Yeah. One of my former colleagues broke that story, actually. Yeah, guy named Alan Butterfield. Yeah, he was.
And the Enquirer won a Pulitzer.
Well,
that doesn't compute, but it did happen, did it not?
Yeah, my former colleague Alan Butterfield was camped out in the Beverly Hilton lobby for a long time and just waiting, and followed some people down into some hallways and got the whole story and ruined the campaign of that candidate. And boy, I tell you, things have changed a lot. That one little story could destroy a candidate, and now these days, I guess you can get away with anything and still run for president.
But getting back to you and this book, I got the feeling that from the moment you first did your first interview that you had in mind writing a book one day.
I did, actually. I did. Very perceptive. Yeah, I guess I'm a bit of a hoarder. I saved everything. I saved every single reporter notebook, down to the license plates of different people coming and going outside Elizabeth Taylor's home, to hospital room numbers, every detail in these notebooks. I saved every clipping of every article I ever wrote, big features for LA Times, little gossip items for Entertainment Weekly. I saved every tape recorded interview with all of these people, many of them who are no longer alive. And the photographs. I never missed an opportunity to get my photo taken with these people I interviewed. Some people thought that was not professional, but I knew it would be in addition to this book that is now suddenly out.
No disrespect. Actually, this is kind of high praise. But as I found myself going from photo to photo to photo, where you're photobombing all these groups and people, I kept thinking of Forrest Gump, who turned up everywhere. And there you are.
Yeah, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know. To be fair, Tanny, to be fair, I love the term photobomb, but it wasn't a photobomb. In a lot of these cases, I was reuniting these casts of classic TV shows. And that's one of the premises of my book, that I was an only child. My father died when I was very young. These TV families, the Bradys and the Carringtons and the Ewings, they were my surrogate TV families. and I really wanted to come out to California and meet them. And then also, whenever I could, group them back together. So a recurring theme in my career has been reunions of old TV casts. And for a long time, I would jump in the photo, and that would be my yearly Christmas card.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's very clever. You touched on something that I was going to bring up. You you mentioned in the book, in the very first chapter, that you felt this affinity to the Brady Bunch.
Yes.
And your father died when you were how old?
5.
And what was the cause?
A car condition he was born with. Yes.
So you never really knew him.
No, I really didn't. Some people have memories of being in the womb. I can't remember anything for the first 5 years of my life. I don't know why. But yeah, I was sort of I became kind of obsessed with death at that point. When I was at the Enquirer, I ended up doing a lot of stories about dying celebrities and crashing funerals. Those stories are in the book. But yeah, I was kind of a lonely kid. I kind of escaped into the world of television and the Brady Bunch. There was something about that, and something about Mr. Brady. A very attractive guy, Robert Reed. But it was in 1991. I was in college and I went to go pick up some supplies at CVS, and I saw the New People magazine. And there was a photo of the Brady kids, along with an inset photo of Robert Reed, who had just died, age 59, I think, of AIDS. So I was just, my gosh, my surrogate TV dad was closeted. He was gay. My dad, actually, as I talked about in the book, was closeted as well. And at that time, I was closeted. So it was just sort of this weird amalgamation of all these feelings. And yeah, Robert Reed's passing really shook me. And I wanted to come out to California and meet as many surviving Bradys as I could. And I ended up meeting all of them. I kind of pictured my face in the missing grid where Robert Reed had been. And yeah, I've had a chance to meet all of them. And Christopher Knight, who played Peter Brady, he wrote a very nice commentary in the book, 2 pages, about this sensation of people feeling like they are a Brady. So I'm really happy that Chris did that. But yeah, I wanted to be a part of that family so badly. And I feel like a lot of people felt the same way.
You look at it now and it's kind of corny. And didn't Robert have issues with the writing?
Yeah, no, he did. He blamed the Brady Bunch for killing his career. Robert Reed was a Shakespearean trained actor. And so, as it turned out, my very first story for the Enquirer was a Brady story. There was tremendous pressure on me at the Enquirer to deliver stories, and I really didn't know how that was done. I had no sources. So I ended up just driving to the Brady Bunch house in Studio City, California. I knocked on the door, and I came up with this idea that the Brady Bunch house maybe was haunted by the ghost of Robert Reed. And I asked the woman, the homeowner, do you hear anything strange at night? Anything in the attic? Maybe a vase knocked over, some chains? She said, no, I would tell you if I did. I said, okay, well, here's my card in case you hear anything. There could be some money in it for you. And she said, well, hold on. Come to think of it. And so I'm like, I got it. I got my first Enquirer source. I was so proud. I went to my editors at the Enquirer and I almost lost my job. They said, that is not the way we do things around here. We don't make up stories. They were really on guard because there had been a mole who had been planted there, and she got all these secrets about how the Enquirer fabricated some things. So yeah, that story I was so proud of nearly ended my first week of employ.
That was 1991 when Robert died.
Might have been 92, Tandy.
92?
Yes, right in there. Yeah.
I don't know anybody who came from a family where everyone was that bubbly and happy.
One of the things I talk about in the book is how it can be really unhealthy if you sacrifice your own life story by living vicariously through these TV stars. And more, I think people are just planting themselves in front of the TV and not living their lives. So I have a lesson learned at the end of each chapter. And
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, that was kind of a last minute addition. And one of the bits of advice is don't live vicariously through storylines on TV. Get out there and create your own storylines. It can be scary to try to find love, to try to pursue your dream job, but man, it's worth it.
It is. It is very much follow your bliss, I believe,
Yes.
is the and many of us don't know what it is when we're young. We don't know what it is that we want to do. We know what it is we don't want to do, but trying to figure out which path to take can sometimes be difficult.
Yeah.
Uh, was it that way for you?
Yeah, I certainly had not thought about becoming an entertainment reporter. I was going to be a screenwriter. I wanted to write movies, write TV. And there was an opportunity actually to write for the Enquirer. I was working as an NBC page. And one of our jobs was to seat the audience for the Tonight Show. This was Johnny Carson's last days at the Tonight Show. And we were
Brave
told,
last days.
yes, we'll get to Brave Last Days. It turned out it was sort of Johnny's Brave Last Days. But even though Johnny was up there, he was, I think, in his late 70s at the time. We were told to seat only younger, good-looking people in those front rows, and that was really awkward for us because a lot of times the first people in line were older people who had waited in line for hours to get those front row seats, and we had to explain to them why they weren't seated where they wanted to be seated. We had to lie, basically. We had to say, oh, you know what, those are reserved for Johnny's 30 young children, or oh, you know, we're seating you in a place with actually a very, very nice unobstructed view where the cameras won't interfere. So it was very shady. It was totally ageist. And a friend of mine had been selling stories to the Enquirer. I normally would never have thought to do that, but I don't know. This was a hypocrisy that I felt should be exposed. I sold the story, and that established a relationship with them. They said, "Hey, you know, would you want to come actually write for us?" And I really wanted to meet all these legends before they died. Lucy had recently passed away, and I knew that working for the Enquirer would be that in. And you mentioned Brave Last Days, and you know a lot of the stories that they did were these brave last days of the golden age dying stars. And so I got to meet all my favorite dying stars. But yeah, they were. I met them in their hospital rooms and at their funerals. So be careful what you wish for.
Cringeworthy, indeed.
Cringeworthy, which was a title at one point for the book.
My mom went to the Ellen show and found herself moved several
Yeah.
rows up. And she thought it was because the woman she had taken with her, a friend, had this T-shirt on that had this logo, and it could very well have played a
Yes,
part in
that's
it
true.
too, but they weren't the demographic
That's right.
that, and my mom thought it was the T-shirt, but as you're telling us now, it probably had to do with the fact that she was in an older demographic.
Yeah, it certainly could have been the case. But I mean, that's the way it is with America's Got Talent or American Idol. If you watch the show, you would think the whole audience is just full of people in their 20s who look like they're TV stars themselves. But no, it's a full range of ages. But those people generally are sort of hidden in the darkness. It's very sad because a lot of times the audiences, the people watching the show are older, but they want the younger viewers. They want to bring in those younger viewers by making it seem as though there's already a built-in audience among the youth. So that's how it started for me.
You were with the Enquirer for how long?
3 years.
What did you know at the end of those 3 years that you wish you could have told you on the day one when you started?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. Um, I think I would have said stay for 1 year. Because I have a ton of great stories from that time, but it was really quite traumatizing. And it took me a while after I quit to become a legitimate journalist. I was sort of stained. It was like I was wearing a scarlet N from National Enquirer around my neck. And yeah, it took a while to be taken seriously because people didn't trust me. Even though I'm the one that quit, I decided to really get clean in my personal life and also my professional life. But people just said, wow, what kind of person would go work for the National Enquirer? Somebody who we can't trust. So it took a while, but I was able to get back in the game.
And how old were you when you started?
I in my 20s, in my 20s. Yeah, yeah. And
Well,
making
that
more money than everybody else my age because it was really, it was like working for the Enquirer or for the mafia, Tandy. You would do these horrible things and they would just pay you more money. You'd be sent into, like I said, hospitals and funerals, and you would just ask these horrible questions, and they're like, "Great job, you got a great story. Here's more money." When you landed one of the lead stories on the front of the magazine, you were paid bonuses. So there were always these incentives to just keep on digging deeper into the dirt.
but it's feast or famine. Your job security at the Enquirer, I was told, was non-existent. You could be fired at the drop of a hat, but you were paid so much more than people at other publications.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that.
What did I get wrong?
Well, because we had to do these really crazy things, there was going to be a margin for failure or for getting caught or putting yourself and others in jeopardy. So they did have your back. I will say that. They didn't try to wash your hands. It was really like this boys' club, and if you needed protection, then they would do what they needed to do to sort of clean up things. One of the stories that I tell in the book is I was attacked by a celebrity. I was beaten up badly. It's the one story in the book where I don't identify the name of the person for legal reasons. But the Enquirer hired attorneys for me and helped support me as we worked out a settlement with this particular celebrity. And there's some clues in that chapter. You may be able to tell who it is. It's a 90s sitcom star. But
Phyllis Diller?
Phyllis Diller beat the what out of me.
Loved her.
Brutal. Got on top of me.
Yeah, I
Bang.
loved Phyllis. I went to her home to interview her, and she's was quite the character.
Yeah, there's a chapter on Phyllis in the book too.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
the reason why I mentioned it.
Oh,
Um, best interview.
my best interview. Well, it's not a story in the book because the stories in the book all are stories that went terribly wrong for some reason or another. But I did have a really nice interview with Johnny Depp. This was for the LA Times. It was for the movie Blow when he did that many years ago. And what I remember about that is Johnny was 3 hours late to our interview. 3 hours late. I think I was 5 minutes late for this interview, but Johnny was 3 hours. And, normally you would just leave at that point, but his publicist kept on coming in saying, oh, he's so sorry. He's on his way. He's going to give you the full 2 hour interview that you were promised. And he did finally show up at the Chateau Marmont. He was very nice. He was smoking. The smoke was blowing right in my face, but he was so charming that you just love this guy. And he was so forthcoming about his past, very personal stories that I completely forgot about the wait. And I was with him, and yeah, it turned out to be a really, really great profile. But yeah, that was pretty memorable.
There is another example of someone who wound up becoming creative, successful, one of the best franchises in film
Oh,
history,
absolutely.
and came from a background that was not Brady at all.
Oh gosh, no, absolutely not. That's absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
What interview, when you look back on it now, is the one that you think, oh my God, how did that happen? What a train wreck.
Well, there's a lot of train wrecks, but the one that really I go, wow, how did that happen? Um, you had asked me before we did our interview to find something to read at some point, a little excerpt
Okay,
from the book. And if you're interested in that, I can actually, this would be that answer.
let's do that now then.
So this little excerpt from the book, I printed it out so I can actually read it quite easily. This was just a few days after Nicole Brown Simpson had been buried.
Oh man. Yeah.
So 30 years ago this year, this happened. And I was sent by my editors to try to get the first interview with Nicole Brown Simpson's family, who were locked away in their gated community. It was a pretty difficult task. And this is what happened, if I can.
Trust me, while I was reading this
Yeah,
segment, I was cringing because I do you remember the older Rose in Titanic? The
sure.
actress's name was
Gloria
Gloria.
Stewart.
Yes,
Yes.
I was at her home, took my mom so she could meet her. And Gloria was, she made books. So
Really?
we were in her studio. And as we were leaving to go out to get in the car, this group of people came by in another car and they screamed, "Go back to Kansas." And I was dumbfounded. And it turned out that right across the street from where Gloria lived was where Nicole Brown Simpson's condo was. And I had not known that. And I thought, oh my God, it's Brentwood, right?
Yeah.
Right there. And I was horrified because no, 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 we're not ghoulish. I'm here for, but
I
that
see.
was such a that whole period. Go ahead and read what you
Yeah,
have.
no, I mean that period changed everything. I mean, every Enquirer reporter was told to stop the stories they were working on and to focus on this. So some people were sent to Mezzaluna, where Ron Goldman had been working. Some people were sent to that condo, and I was sent to the home, the gated community home of Nicole Brown Simpson's family. So this is what happened. If I can share this with you,
Go right ahead.
um, my editor's instructions this morning were clear, as if my job depended upon it. I was to put on some nice clothes, get in my car, and immediately head south to Dana Point, the seaside town where Nicole's parents lived in a private gated community called Monarch Beach. Once there, I was to employ any means necessary to gain entry into the community in order to secure an exclusive on the record interview with the Brown family. OJ, come kill me now. Not surprisingly, the security guards were already on high alert for pesky journalists like me, who were willing to make any conceivable or inconceivable story necessary to get past their gates. So when I tried to make a grocery delivery, I was immediately turned away. Brian, it's not going to work, I called my editor to report. Will, you're a smart guy and you can do this, Brian encouraged me. Find a way, be creative. I thought about just throwing in the towel and telling Brian to screw off, but this cunning fox had a way of getting inside your head, almost like an Italian godfather or cult leader, so that you wanted to make daddy proud. He'd pump up your ego to the point where there was no doubt you were capable of pulling off the most heinous acts. So I decided to drive just a little further down the coast to the beachfront Ritz-Carlton, Laguna Niguel luxury hotel. I valeted my car and marched to the lobby with my shoulders back, projecting my own fabricated Kardashian confidence so as not to arouse the suspicion of security. Once inside, I quickly descended the hotel's stone staircase leading down to the beach, which was shared by the hotel and the Browns' residential compound. Now, I'm the type of guy who can sweat like a pig in a snowstorm, so you can imagine how miserable it was traipsing through a sandy beach in the middle of blistering June afternoons, dressed in a suit and tie. But as I slipped off my dress shoes and rolled up my pants, my initial fears began to give way to a massive adrenaline rush. This insane plan might actually work. All of a sudden, I felt like Lucy Ricardo coming up with a screwball scheme to infiltrate the home of her favorite matinee idol, Robert Wagner, just days after he'd buried Natalie Wood. With little effort, I easily scaled the gate surrounding the Monarch Beach residences. And before I knew it, I was inside, rolling my socks back up on my ankles and praying I wouldn't pass out before making my way up a steep hill to the address Brian had provided, 222 Monarch Beach Drive. I hadn't even considered what I might do in the unlikely event that I actually made it to the Brown family home. So when I found myself standing outside the house, all I could do was snap a photo. but I knew Williams would want more, allowing me to flee the scene. My anxiety was surging. Though OJ had been arrested and charged with a double homicide the day after Nicole's burial, what if he'd escaped and was on his way to visit his children at Grandma and Grandpa's? The photo in my camera would at least exist as evidence of me having made it this far after police discovered me gutted and lifeless in the bushes. Brian, my editor, was naturally elated when I called to tell him how far I'd come since our previous call. I knew you could do it, he said. Now just go up and knock on the door. But what do I tell them? Tell them the truth. Will, you're a journalist. You know what to do. Sigh, he was right. I did know what to do. I just really didn't want to. Outside the Brown's house, I took in one deep breath and just knocked. Moments later, the door opened, and I was greeted by a housekeeper. I smiled warmly, trying to control my quivering lip and bladder, and cheerfully chirped, "Good morning. I'm here to pay my respects to Mrs. Brown." And just like that, I was ushered inside the house and escorted to a small sitting room where Nicole's mother, Juditha, and her surviving daughters, Denise, Dominique, and Tanya, were seated around a framed portrait of their slain Nicole with tears in their eyes. Mrs. Brown immediately stood up and took my clammy hand in hers. My blood was racing. I'm lucky I didn't drop dead of a coronary right there on the spot. I suddenly had to pee really badly, but was pretty sure this wasn't the right time to ask to use the bathroom. "Thank you for coming," said the surprisingly composed Brown matriarch. "How did you know my daughter?"
Wow.
Yeah.
Where angels fear to tread.
Yeah.
And you actually, after her asking that, you actually got an interview.
I did. I never thought that I would get this far. And I certainly didn't have a question prepared in case I did. So at that point, the whole family sort of escorted me to the foyer of their house. But Mrs. Brown said, "Well, why have you come here? What do you want to know?" And I asked the right question. I said, "How did you tell your grandchildren that their mother was gone?" And I think she was really anxious to start telling Nicole's story because all the focus had been on OJ, the
Yes.
superstar. And she
Yes.
wanted people to know who this lovely woman was who lost her life. She told me a story about how she sat the grandchildren down and explained that mommy was in heaven. She was an angel who would always be looking after them. And now she had four other mommies who would be looking after them. And what happened is the story was printed and they loved it. And they came to trust the Enquirer as their mouthpiece. And it established a relationship with the Brown family. It lasted for about 3 years.
Best wedding story.
Mm. Well, I guess one of the TV families I loved was the Keatons from Family Ties. And so I was sent to go crash Meredith Baxter Burney's wedding. And I ended up taking a friend of mine. She was a Christian, but I didn't tell her what wedding we were going to. I just said it was a friend. And so we get there, and she's like, "Were you actually invited to this wedding reception?" I'm like, "Well, not exactly." And she said, "Okay, I will go with you, but I will not lie." So we ended up getting into the reception, and we were seated next to the man who had performed the wedding. So the table was asking us questions. How do you know the bride and groom? We had to get through all of this. But it was all worth it because when it came time for the cake cutting, I got up and, along with the other guests, and pulled my camera out and got a lovely picture of the cake cutting. And that appeared in that week's Enquirer. I will say the key to crashing a wedding is to bring a gift. So I had purchased a $15 Target frame, and I just walked in with that and placed that there along with all the other gifts. And I write in the book that I hope that Meredith maybe clipped that article out with the cake cutting and put that inside the frame.
You have, at the end of each of the chapters, someone in that chapter writes something. And I thought, wow, how did he get them to do this? Talking about meeting or the interaction.
Yeah.
how did you get that kind of access to them to contribute to your book? Because that's kind of a no small ask.
Well, I did it for a couple reasons. In some cases, I did it for legal reasons, just to make sure that they had a chance to look it over and correct something that they wanted to or respond.
Very
Um,
smart.
what's that?
Very smart.
Yeah, but I also did it because the book is not about exposing celebrity secrets at all. I did that back in the day. This is not a celebrity tell-all. It's a tell-all of someone who worked there, and I'm confessing my own sins. I'm apologizing for the things that I did to get these stories. So, in the good-natured spirit of the book, I thought it would be a good idea to reach out and give them a chance to respond. The first person I went out to was Marcia Cross from Desperate Housewives. And I was sent to her home back in the day for USA Today to do a very nice, upbeat, at-home interview with her to meet her new twin girls. And that morning, a story had leaked that there were nude photos of her that had come out of the past. And I think they were up on PerezHilton.com, that gossip site. And so I had a dilemma. Do I bring this up in the interview or not? It was sort of like the angel and the devil. Don't do it, Will. It's a nice at-home piece. There's no reason to bring up nude photos. The other part, gosh, it could be a good little scoop if I get that and make it a little more salacious and newsworthy. And the Enquirer was still in me. I quit the Enquirer, but it took a long time for the Enquirer to quit me. So I brought it up at the end of the interview, and it ruined everything. Ruined the whole mood. And she got up, and I left. It was really a shame. So I reached out to Marcia. She's so lovely. She said she remembered the interview, but really did not focus on that part at all. And that's a choice of how you live your life. Do you choose to focus on the positive or the negative? She chose to focus on the positive. None of that nude photo stuff made it into the story to begin with. But yeah, Marcia wrote a lovely sidebar to that chapter. She wrote about that she really wasn't mad about that. What she was mad about was whoever took those photos. She was in her backyard. There's a private showering moment, and she paid $10,000 to supposedly make those photos go away, and then they reappeared anyway. So it's really interesting hearing these stories from their perspective. And I was really grateful to every one of the celebrities who chose to do that. Not all of them did, and some of them, many of them are gone. So in certain cases, I would reach out to a co-star to speak on their behalf. Rich Little speaks in my Dean Martin chapter about Dean's last days, and Sybil Shepherd speaks about my Bruce Willis chapter. Bruce sadly is not in a place to be able to speak for himself. Bruce threatened to burn my house down at one point, so Sybil takes the opportunity to defend him and say that he was kidding. He really never intended to show up to my house with a match and a tank of gasoline.
You had several people make withering comments to your face. What was the one that you most recall now with as you just chuckled? Which one comes to mind?
Yeah, some of them were to my face. Some of them were in their own books. Kelsey Grammer, and I got to say, I was pretty tough on him during the Frasier years. He was his own bad boy. I was a tabloid bad boy. He was a sitcom bad boy. And so I was sent out to cover a lot of stories about him. And so when he wrote his book, he devoted a couple pages to me, calling me out by name as a despicable piece of flesh who he invited to burn in hell. There's an audio book version, and so you can hear Kelsey as Frasier's saying, "I invite you to burn in hell. Your mother must be very, very proud of you." So I pulled some of that for the back of the book. Yeah, I mean, I have a few of these quotes on the back of the book, and yeah, Kelsey's is. I invite this young man to fry in hell, but that's probably a done deal already.
Wow, nice.
Yeah,
Uh, let's talk about the funeral that most comes to mind that
yeah,
you crashed.
yeah. Well, I mean that has to be Dean Martin, the legendary Las Vegas crooner, Jerry Lewis's former movie partner. He passed away in 1995 after I did a lot of those brave last days stories, and he had a private service at a cemetery in Westwood, California. The cemetery was cleared. They cleared the grounds. I was one of the people that was there, hoping to sneak in, but I was pushed out by security. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So I was walking around the perimeter, a cinder block wall, that prevented people from seeing inside the cemetery. And there was a neighborhood in the back of the cemetery, and one of the residents had a tree with a branch that extended over the wall right by the chapel. So my paparazzi photographer and I rented the tree for the evening. I think it was $500, and we perched up there and just waited for the celebrities to arrive.
You rented
We
the
rented
tree.
a tree, and after it got dark, the photographer left. I had a full list of all the guests that were attending. And the highlight had to be when, from inside the chapel, I heard Rosemary Clooney singing That's Amore, one of Dean's hits.
Isn't this where Marilyn and Truman Capote are interred behind the Avco Theater?
Yes, absolutely, Tandy. So when I have friends come from out of town and they say, we want to see the stars, take us to see some celebrities, I always take them to Westwood Memorial Park in Westwood, because that is where, like you said, Marilyn Monroe, Walter Matthau, Jack Lemmon, Hugh Hefner, it goes on and on and on. Farrah Fawcett, Ryan O'Neal is buried next to Farrah Fawcett now. They're all there. So I always say you can get a selfie with their tombstone, you can get an autograph etching of their gravestone. Natalie Wood. I could go on and on and on. They're all there, and it's a very small property.
Let's go to there's a story in your book about a
Now,
book.
let me tell you one thing, Tandy. You reminded me of something. So
Okay.
Truman Capote, he's one of the first mausoleum interments you see there. His name is there, and beneath him is Heather O'Rourke, the little girl from Poltergeist.
Oh my gosh.
Dominique Dunn, who was the older sister in Poltergeist, is also buried in that cemetery. And I was interviewing Jo Beth Williams, who played the Poltergeist mother, not long ago. And I asked if she ever went to visit them, and she said she had. And she had never told anyone this, that she instructed her sons to scatter some of her ashes there with Heather and Dominique when her time comes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so all the women of Poltergeist will be together as poltergeists.
I don't even know what to say to that.
There's nothing to say to that, Andy. Let's move
You
on.
walked into a hospital room where someone had just given birth.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's sort of a, well, it had a happy ending. So yeah, I write a lot about the celebrities who are dying, whose hospital rooms I had to sneak into, or those that had recently died. But yeah, we would also try to get the first photos and details about babies. And the particular story I think that you're referencing is Connie Selica, the actress from Greatest American Hero and Hotel. She had just given birth to a daughter with her husband, John Tesh, from Entertainment Tonight. And so, listen, I did a lot of things that I'm not proud of. It was part of the job. You had to pretend to be different people. So I pretended to be a flower delivery person. And I brought in a big bouquet of flowers from a radio station that had been playing John's music. And yeah, Connie was breastfeeding at the time.
Oh gosh.
And I asked about the baby and its weight and its name, and I got a story about the name. So yeah, I confessed that, and then I did. I reached out to John Tesh and Connie Selica, gave them a chance to respond. I didn't hear from them for 3 weeks, and I was driving in my car one day, and John Tesh's booming voice, William, this is John Tesh. I'm here with Connie. You've written something about us in a book. I told him the story. Connie, rightly so, was horrified. John thought it was quite hysterical. He was laughing and thought it was pretty ingenious of me to claim that the flowers were from the radio station, The Wave. Connie was like, well, how do I even know that you're who you say you are? And I gave him some names, friends we had in common, so they could check me out. And in the end, Connie sent me a lovely family photo, a recent photo of John and Connie with their now 30-year-old grown-up daughter, Prima, a graduation photo. And she had a nice little line in there about we're all about forgiveness and change. And so we applaud you for reaching out for forgiveness. So that was really nice to have that little kind of happy ending. So it was really a horribly invasive thing I did.
Well, I mean, looking back, I applaud you for having the the balls, let's just call it what it is, to be able to do what you did. I would never have had the moxie to pull off half of that. I always thought of myself as a good reporter. I could get the story out, I could do it in a hurry, but I would never have been able to walk into a, a wedding or crash a funeral or do anything like that. I mean, I just wouldn't have had the gumption. Where do you think that came from?
Well, I was a kid in my 20s. I had a lot of energy, and I really did want to meet all my favorite stars. I mean, another funeral I crashed. I was a huge fan of the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, and I had told my editors that if there's ever a chance to do a story on Lindsay Wagner, I would love to do it. And then one day they said, "Hey, it's your lucky day. Lindsay Wagner's father died. Go crash the funeral and try to get some pictures and information about her new boy toy that she's dating." So my photographer Vincent and I went to the wedding or the funeral. He hid in the bushes. I mingled in with the crowd, and I met Lindsay, and she thought I was just a regular mourner. "How did you know my father?" I explained, "Well, actually, I'm with the Enquirer, and well, what do you need from me?" I said, "Well, we already got some photos of you and your new boyfriend, so maybe a caption." She said, "Okay, I'll give you a caption. F you." And I said, "Listen, I totally understand. You're absolutely right. I apologize. I'll leave now." And she said, hold on. This is my boyfriend. This is his name." And what happened is Lindsay is such a smart, forgiving lady. She and her boyfriend were launching a Native American jewelry line. And so the article ended up not only talking about the relationship, but also kind of doing a plug for the jewelry line. And God bless Lindsay. I did a panel with Lindsay recently, and we took a photograph of her holding the book. And she wrote a very nice thing in the beginning of the book about the power of forgiveness and that it's never too late to change. So again, I'm really grateful to these people for giving me a second chance.
A win-win situation.
I hope so.
Tell me, Will, is there anything I didn't ask or anything that we didn't touch upon that you'd like to bring up now?
Well, in addition to the book being all these great celebrity stories, there's a through line of my own life, because one of the themes is that while I was doing all these things trying to extract the secrets of celebrities, I was keeping secrets of my own about my own life, about my past, about my sexuality. I was exposing people for being in having affairs, yet I was not telling people the truth about being gay. So I talk about this arc that I had and wanting to clean up my personal life, and it also coincided with cleaning up my professional life. I ended up being in a seminar about personal growth with Judith Light, the actress Judith Light. She ended up being the first person that I came out to. And I talk about the time when I actually left the Enquirer, and I was coming back from a wedding, not a celebrity wedding. It was actually my college roommate's wedding, and we were coming back from Staten Island on the ferry, and I saw that the new issues of the Enquirer had been put out. I was on vacation, so I didn't know what the stories were going to be. I wanted to see if one of my stories was going to be on the cover, but instead the main image was a photo, a very sad photo of Raquel Welch. There was no story. It was just a sad photo that a paparazzi had taken. And they talked about the sad, lonely life of Raquel Welch. They had another photo of her looking like her glam younger self. The other two stories on the cover were also nasty, something about Joan London's friend having died in a plane crash, and a story trying to expose Rosie O'Donnell for being gay. And I looked at all this and it was just like, ew, ew. I saw myself in every one of those people. Like Joan London, I've suffered the tragic sudden loss of people I love. I, like Rosie O'Donnell, was in the closet, and certainly I've had days like Raquel Welch where I felt really sad. I have a whole story in my Courtney Cox chapter about depression, and battling that. So yeah, that was one of the main factors that kind of woke me up to to realizing that was not the man that I wanted to be.
Okay, that's a good place
Yeah.
to leave it.
Oh,
Well, Will Keck, or Kecky, as your editor called you all those many years ago.
right.
Thank you, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, Tandy. Really great questions. Thank you for reading the book.
My pleasure.